I don't know if I'm excited to share this or if I'm embarrassed to share this, but I have cried more in the last 24 hours than I have cried in months. Yesterday was a day. Hello, and welcome to 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the significant and strategic choices that every one of us can make in order to become the best versions of ourselves. My name is Dr. Michael Brown. I am the host of 3 Words, and I'm here today in our studio with my dear friend, famous friend, I guess I should say, author, speaker, amazing human being, none other than Amy Seiffert. And Amy, 3 words today, 3 tender words, 3 very real and raw words. Would you share them with us?
Let yourself cry.
I don't know if I'm excited to share this or if I'm embarrassed to share this, but I have cried more in the last 24 hours than I have cried in months. Yesterday was a day.
Oh my gosh, I want to hear these things. Go ahead.
It was a day. Yesterday, my first grandson was born.
It's amazing.
And it was kind of a challenging delivery, and we were all waiting, and we weren't there, obviously, being able to watch. Well, not that we would watch and listen and to be near because of social distancing. We were just waiting. The text messages would come from my son-in-law, and it just took so long. And it was close to 24 hours of labor.
Oh.
And then when they sent the picture of my grandson, I just burst into tears in my office. I was hoping nobody would come by. I just burst into tears with such relief and joy and happiness. And at the same time, also yesterday, dear friend passed away. So on the same day that I was experiencing the joy of a birth, the first grandchild in our family, and the death of a friend at the university where I work and in our office, it was this mix of emotions. And, you know, I tended to want to do what I despise, and I hate the phrase, hold back the tears. But I felt like I wanted to hold back the tears, even though I was alone in my office. I just felt, I don't know, awkward, strange. And so I think the timing of this conversation is perfect for me, and am so interested in hearing your perspective, Amy. You have so many thoughts on so many fantastic things, and just your insights into this notion of letting yourself cry. Go there with us today.
Well,
I need it.
I love that you just talked about that, because the release of your tears, there was so many things that happened in that moment. Your body was like, let me feel and go into this space. But we often want to hold it back. Like culturally, we've been told to I wanted to cry, but I toughed it out and didn't. And I hid my tears, all these things, instead of being like, no, I was brave and I cried because I was paying compassionate attention to myself and my body. And she was saying to me, cry, let it out.
You use the word brave.
Yeah.
Because typically when we think about crying, particularly for men, they'll think that is a sign of weakness, not bravery, not courage.
Right. Oh, I have believed so many lies about tears, and the pandemic has really brought that to light for me, because I think 2 things that are just baloney that I was believing. One, I work in a pretty male dominated space. And so I was thinking, if I let tears come into any of this moment here, it's going to look like weakness. And I also believe that if you're crying, then you aren't thinking, or you're not logical, or weakness,
Yeah.
and it's baloney. Because there's so many great things. So 4 lies that I identified about my tears. And even the bravery piece is huge. So the first lie, that I identified was tears mean weakness. And the opposite is tears mean bravery, because you're being vulnerable. And that is brave to let yourself
for sure
cry and let it out. Second thing, tears are the opposite of thinking. That's the lie that I often believe. But tears mean you're emotionally literate. Like you are paying attention to what's happening in your body, and you're letting yourself go all the way through and even complete the stress cycle that you're feeling, and cleansing and releasing and letting that out for joy, for grief, for tension, for stress, all of it. There's so many things that your body is doing with tears. I believe the lie is that tears mean you're too much. Like, oh, she's too much over there with her tears. But again, tears mean you're paying attention to what's happening. And the fourth lie, tears mean you're not logical, which tears actually mean they can bring clarity. When you're done crying, you can feel like I can see the world again, or I know this tunnel I just traveled, I'm on the other side. I can look back and be like, no, there was joy and there was pain. There was so much. You can identify a lot because you released tears. Let yourself cry.
Well, you talked about where you work and the space in which you work that's male dominated. Obviously I do as well because I'm working with student athletes on campus. Obviously there's male and female students, but particularly with our football team, 105 men, in their space, in the SIBO Center, they're on the wall. It talks about being mentally tough. And one day I was doing a session with them on a Wednesday evening and I said to them, do you really want to be mentally tough? And they kind of murmured and mumbled, well, yeah. And I'm like, no, seriously, do you want to be mentally tough? And I kind of wound them up and had this conversation. And I got to the point where they're like, yeah, we want to be mentally tough. I was like, well, here's what you need to do. Cry at least once a week.
Oh. They do?
The look on their faces were like, what? And in many ways, because what we typically do is we bury our emotions.
Yes.
We stuff our emotions. We ignore our emotions. We numb. We are numb to our emotions. And I've been working with our athletes on campus to really help them become mentally tough. So when they step onto the rink and onto the field and onto the court and onto the course in the pool, that they actually feel this mental toughness, but they're not going to be mentally tough if they're not in touch with their emotions. And if they're not allowing pain, as you say, to flow through the tunnel, to go through that process. And it's been interesting as I've shared that. We're all a little resistant, even me as I say it out loud. Because I'll just be fully honest. Like I teach this, but when I'm in that moment, I despise it because it's everything in me wants to say, no, no, no. But when I have pulled back the curtain and when I have cried in the presence of people, it's healing. I recently had, socially distanced, of course, in my backyard under a tent, some football players who one started sharing a story of tremendous pain and tremendous challenge. And he began to tear up. I wondered how the others would respond. Well, then one after another, they began to tear up and they began to share. It actually gave them permission to feel, but also permission to be vulnerable, to be transparent, to go there with this individual who took that risk. I don't want to say maybe he didn't take the risk. Maybe he was forced there because of the vulnerability of that moment. He felt like he had no choice because that's typically what happens. It breaks through. Right? But the purpose of this podcast is don't just deal with it when it breaks through. Choose to let it break through.
Lean in.
Yeah, lean in. Let yourself cry.
And that's interesting. When you let yourself cry in front of others, it's another step of bravery beyond crying in the shower. My favorite place to cry. Like I'm like just all the water, all the tears, whatever. Just let it all flow and just have my time. But in front of others, you actually draw support. And then when you empathize and let yourself also sit in the dark with your friend, it's powerful. That's connection. Again, connection over vulnerability and bravery that we often think, no, I'm going to shut it down. But actually I'm going to open it up and connect through our tears. I was doing some research. I found eight like benefits of crying.
Oh, let's hear it.
I know, right? It has a soothing effect for your body. You learn to self-soothe, which is really sweet. You can rally support from others as you let your tears fall. It helps relieve pain. So shedding that emotional release, which is interesting because the pain is building in some way, or the joy, whatever is building, and to let it out. Again, it's a cleansing process. It can enhance your mood because tears release oxytocin and those good chemicals, which again, I want to shut them down to be strong. That's just false. It's a lie. Like lean in and travel the tunnel all the way through. You sleep better after you've had a good cry.
Interesting.
Babies do too. So all the mamas that are listening, your baby's crying, just think they will sleep great tonight. Like
I'll tell my daughter, let that baby cry all night long.
They're going to sleep awesome. Then there's two more. Fights bacteria. So there's a cleansing release with the tears. Yeah. Okay. And it improves your vision. very practically, like a lubricated eye over a dry eye, like you'll see better.
Who knew?
It's amazing.
So now I feel better about crying on a regular basis.
Cry it up.
And quite honestly, I mean, you've talked about benefits. You've talked obviously research at this point in time, and we've shared some stories, but I feel most human.
That's it.
When I cry. Joy, fear, release, anger at times. I feel most human. So it's humanity.
Yeah.
It's helpful. It's healing, all the things you describe. But, one of the things that we talk about in D&B coaching, and even is our mission statement, is that we want to help and assist human beings in being fully alive.
Yes.
And so this is a part of that, the ability to express deep emotion through the emotional dimension of our lives. We talk about the 12 dimensions of life. And obviously this dimension intersects with every dimension of our life. This practice of crying intersects with every dimension of life. I mean, relationships, right?
Yes.
Our spirituality.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times when we need to cry out to God
Yes.
or cry out because we're just feeling the injustices, to cry over the injustices in our world today.
Weep with those who weep. Yes,
I love it.
absolutely.
Tell me more about that. Because obviously you're talking about weeping with those who weep. You're probably saying literally in the presence, because you've hinted at this, in the presence of other people.
Yes. Join their tears. Let yourself see and feel. And you talk about humanity, like to go beyond just what you're thinking in your own brain or what you see right in front of you, but let yourself see the bigger picture of what's happening. Step into that place and weep with those who grieve, with those who grieve. Like let yourself really see it all. Because I think when we practice shutting off the tears, now we're shutting off. We're not whole. We're shutting off all kinds of emotions, and we're making ourselves one-dimensional, very flat characters.
In our perspective, as I listen to you, what I'm realizing,
Yeah.
Amy, you're teaching me a lot here, is that our perspective is so narrow
Yeah.
that tears, it makes sense to me now, that tears actually broaden,
Yes.
enlarge, and enhance my perspective because I'm experiencing the wholeness of a situation, the wholeness of a relationship, the entirety of a feeling
Yes.
and of being in a space or a place or with this person. And why would we not? Why would we not want to be fully human?
I know our culture has shut that down and said, smush down, be small. Don't let yourself fully be human. I mean, the shortest verse in the Bible of the spiritual dimension is Jesus wept. And I love it because I'm like, he wept for his friend that died. And he stepped into that place and he felt with everyone else in that moment. He didn't step outside of it all and say, I'm too good to enter in. No, he was all about coming in, and we can do that too. We can practice that. And our tears, they are so valuable. I think I've not counted them as valuable.
Amy, thank you for being my teacher. Thank you for being my mentor. I'm going to, as we summarize this, speak directly to the listener and the viewer today. These are challenging times. And within every single human being on this planet, undoubtedly, we are experiencing emotion and feelings, pain, disappointment, in maybe ways we never have. And so I want to join with you, and Amy wants to join with you, and together let's commit beginning now to being fully human by first being willing and being open enough to let ourselves cry. For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.